My name is Yetty Williams. I have an MBA. I'm trained specifically in cyberpsychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, and mental health first aid. So basically what all of this means is, in addition to me being an accredited coach with the EMCC, European Mentoring and Coaching Council, I have experience not only from the training perspective, but also from the fact that I have had a lot of lived experiences and experience training, coaching, speaking to, honestly, probably thousands of parents at this point. And one of the things that I recognize is in the digital world that we live in, yes, we can talk about online safety, but there are a lot of things that come into play to making sure that families today are wholesome, healthy, and ready for the world. So when I founded LagosMums, it was over a decade ago as a new mom. And it was almost like I had a ball that I could see into the future. I just felt that then all our lives are going to be very different because of technology. And that's exactly what it is. And luckily, after 10 years of all this research, I was able to write a book, which I launched last year in December 2024, early this year. So that's where I've added author to my list. And that book, Digital Savvy Parenting, What the World Urgently Needs, is a book that I created, imagining what I would love to have gotten or, to have had as a companion as I raise my children in this digital age. My children are teenagers, older teenagers, and I recognize that there's such a big shift, and more parents are struggling with how to navigate the digital world in a healthy, wholesome way, while making sure that their children are benefiting, so you can't come from a place of fear. So what does all of that mean? It's a lot. But today, particularly in this series of digital parenting masterclasses I run for free, I want to talk about how to break generational patterns, how to replace limiting beliefs, and how to build a stronger family. I find that a lot of all of these things they coexist. And if we're not aware of whatever patterns we're bringing generationally, those that we need to break that are negative, obviously, if we're not able to replace limiting beliefs with the right growth mindset, positive thoughts, it's very difficult to build a strong family, especially in a world where our distractions, influence, it's so high. So that's what today is going to be about. The first slide here I'm kicking off with is that we're not raising children, we are raising adults. I believe that we're raising adults who will be ready for the future. And if we're raising an adult, you need to go there and then walk backwards to say, what are the things I need to put in place to ensure that the adults I'm raising for the future, not what we currently have, but for the future. How do we make sure that our beliefs are shaping them positively? How do we ensure that the blueprint we are using is preparing them for this digital world, not the past that we knew? A lot of us parents today are the last generation of parents who have one leg in analog and one leg in digital. That means a lot of us that are parents today with children of a certain age, we don't remember there being a world where everything was digital. A lot of us had to learn it at some point. But for a lot of Gen Zs and younger, they don't know a world pre-digital. So it's quite different. And sometimes that's what causes a lot of tension, especially in what I've seen in some of the clients I've worked with. All right, so today's goal is to understand what generational patterns and limiting beliefs look like in families. We will learn how to replace them with empowering, intentional patterns, and this will help us to start building a stronger family, especially for the digital age. All right, so what are generational patterns? A lot of them are behavioral attitudes, fears, mindsets that are passed down both consciously and unconsciously. I love reading, looking at research, and what we see, there's a particular book I read that said, it didn't start with you. That's what the book was about. And it was saying that they carried out research and found out that, I think it was most what I'm looking for, survivors of the Holocaust. They found out that the stress that a grandmother had was passed down from her to her daughter into her granddaughter. I'm probably not paraphrasing it right, but basically what they were saying was that they saw signs that whatever trauma a grandmother had gone through and trapped in her body, remember, women are born with all the eggs that they would have. So if somebody is born in a traumatic environment, very high stress, some of those negative patterns are actually passed down 2 generations. Now, we can imagine likewise, if we're able to recognize that power and we ensure that we're thinking about our patterns, our beliefs, what are we passing down both unconsciously and consciously? That means that we can also rewire and reset, the future generations as well. So some of the generational patterns, there are many, many, many ones, but just some that I feel like we can also resonate with. I mean, my clients and my audience are global at this point, but a lot of my followers and audience and clients are mostly African. And so some of the common themes are things like children should be seen, not heard. Boys don't cry, but I think that's a global one. That technology is dangerous, keep them off it. These fall under fears/attitudes. And if you have some of this attitudes, fears, mindset, it will affect your behavior, which you then pass down generation to generation. So for example, when we talk about boys don't cry, we are learning now that it doesn't work long-term for a man to not have the emotional intelligence required to express their feelings, to talk about how they're feeling. They need to be able to talk. So we need to start changing this mindset that boys don't cry. This is leading to some of the things we're seeing online with, misogyny, toxic masculinity, people like Andrew Tate. And if you've heard of him, you want to do a quick Google just to get up to date. The show Adolescence on Netflix that came out, I think in March, really highlighted how this idea of men are supposed to be a certain way that is quite toxic and dangerous for themselves and women in their lives. We need to recognize that we as parents we're at the front seat right now to ensure that we're changing certain beliefs and attitudes. And the reason why it's so important to identify, because you might say, what's the big deal? If this is just how we are in my family, this is just how we do things. We are seeing 2 reasons why this is very important to identify what patterns are operating in your family. It's because number 1, we are seeing that the influence of the internet means that there's so much external information coming into our lives that if your family's mindset is not one that your children feel serves them, they can totally shape their mind by what they're seeing online. So there's like a struggle right now. What is the value system in the house and what is out there? And no longer do we have that time when children are under your roof, under your nose, really, until maybe when they go to university, maybe. Now, from the minute they are able to use the internet, they are getting all kinds of, opinions and thoughts, mindsets, attitudes that are coming in. And so if you're not sure, okay, what are our patterns? Are they positive? Is our mindset in this family one of growth, positivity, respect, critical thinking? Those are the things that are going to push families forward. So I just wanted us to set the tone in terms of what are generational patterns? Why is it important? It's a mix of behaviors, attitudes, fears, and mindsets, and they tend to be passed down both unconsciously and consciously. Now, when we start to recognize this, guess what? You can start rewiring your unconscious to lead to the actions you want to be more positive. We have a lot of thoughts per day, and what we know is that our subconscious is trying to be very efficient, so it starts to kick in. And once it sees a particular pattern, because it has coded it in your brain that, when we see this particular thing, this is generally how Yetty thinks about it. So when it comes, it tends to immediately give me those thoughts to lead to my behaviors because it has wired, this is how Yetty thinks about this thing. So if you want to change that mindset, for example, boys don't cry, what would you be changing it to? Now, this brings us to the next thought of what are limiting beliefs? Now, the first one was generational patterns as a mix of behaviors, attitudes, fears, mindset, right? Limiting beliefs are those thoughts that hold us back or keep us stuck. Now, as individuals, we're a mix of good thoughts, bad thoughts, negative thoughts, empowering thoughts. We're a mix of all of those things. But one thing I like to share with my clients and people I talk to in general is that because you have a thought doesn't mean it's the truth. It's just a thought. So we need to get to that ability, to that point where when we have a thought, able to sit with it just for a millisecond. Okay, where's that thought coming from? And I found that it's an activity that once you start doing it, you become a better individual. It's not even just about parenting, which is very important, one of our most important roles. If you're on this call, you're most likely a parent. So it's very, very important. However, as individuals, we have to be able to check our thoughts. And this is from my training in therapeutic interventions, is that we need to be able to check our thoughts. First of all, you catch it, then you check it, and then you're able to correct it. But to correct something, you need to know what you want to correct it with. So from some common parenting examples of limiting beliefs, like parents who say, I'm not tech savvy. I can't keep up. I don't know what to do. I don't even understand social media. I don't like tech. You know what? I can't keep up. That's a limiting belief that suggests that because you don't understand it, means you can't participate in it. We'll talk a bit more about why this stance is very, very detrimental to children and families. If you believe you can't keep up and then you don't even try, that means you're leaving your children to the internet to do what they would like with their mindset. Another limiting belief is if I don't spank my child, they will turn out bad. Says who? I asked parents that everybody that was spanked, did they all turn out okay? We talk about, African leaderships, African leaders, for example. We talk about African parenting style that is so tough. But if it's so tough, hello, let's look at some of the issues we have across leadership, across the continent. So spanking is not a solution necessarily. Spanking does not equal people will turn out right. Yeah, I have something I call positive discipline, which I teach parents. Positive discipline means that you are aware that, of course, you must discipline your child. However, spanking is not the only solution. Rather, you want to think about what behavior are you correcting. So for you to want to discipline, something has happened that you don't like, it's not part of your value system, you think it's bad for the child, whatever the series of reasons is. But then you have to think, okay, I want to correct this behavior with this behavior. How am I going to make it happen? Many times when you spank, it's in frustration and the child may not have learned anything. Maybe all they've learned is fear, not to do that again. But if you want to go one step further, you want to explain to your child why that is bad, what the better behavior is, what you expect, and then you rinse and repeat. Children have not walked this world before, neither have we. But we have the hindsight, we have experience, so we have to be able to explain to our children why something is bad, what we want them to do instead, and explain it to them patiently. Another limiting belief I find is things like, oh, if children ask too many questions, if they ask questions, that means they are rude. Not necessarily. The child asking questions is fantastic. We're born curious, but somehow we expect that curiosity should just not be in our children, and we'll just say things like, because I said so. Especially in today's day and age, you want to make sure if your children are asking you questions, you encourage it, because that means you have a chance to shape their mindsets and their beliefs. So we've talked about generational patterns. We've talked about limiting beliefs. These are particularly thoughts that hold us back. And these are just a few that I put. Of course, there will be so many limiting beliefs, but I find that if you're not aware of these two dynamics, it can really affect your life individually and as a family unit. All right, so what are the costs of it being left unchecked? So, okay, I don't know what my generational patterns are. All right. I don't even know if I have any limiting beliefs. I'm just parenting as the day comes, based on my mood, based on what happens today, based on what my neighbor's cousin's friends say. You need to be able to say, you know what, if I leave all of this unchecked, some things that happen are emotional distance. If a child feels that your mindset is not one that, and children nowadays are becoming more mature much earlier. So if a child is able to look online, see other people around them and just feel like, see how other people interact with their parents, I see how other people are able to communicate. Why can't we communicate like that? Some emotional distance that's happening. Or your child has a particular love language. And that's something that a lot of parents might not realize. But while we have the love languages that Gary Chapman came up with, 5 main love languages, he really looked at relationships from the perspective of love. However, children also have a love language. So if, for example, your child's love language is words of affirmation, that means the child that loves it when you say things like, oh, well done, I'm so proud of you. And that's also the child that when you speak harsh words to them, it really makes them feel very bad about themselves. It kills their self-esteem. It's not that any child should be hearing negative words. However, some children, it's like you're cutting them. Speaking to them harshly is making more wounds than if you even spank them. So if you're not sure, if you don't understand your child's emotional needs, how they respond to words, are you communicating with them, it can cause distance. And I keep telling parents in this day and age we live in, that if we allow there to be emotional distance, what is happening in this world today, in the digital age, is children are feeling that distance with online influence, whether it's AI-powered companions, which is happening, or they find somebody online who recognizes that, this one I can groom this one because this one shares things that show that maybe they're disconnected with their parents. So I hope I'm connecting the dots because, anything that your child feels, positive or negative, most likely the algorithms, meaning the internet, the social media platforms they use, is going to pick up on that somehow. And that's going to start to create more of a distance between them and their parents. Now, the other thing is mistrust or over-monitoring. If your generational patterns or your thought patterns are very fixed, you think technology is bad, so therefore you don't trust your child being online at all, and you're always monitoring them. The only thing you're doing is creating a child that's going to be very creative in figuring out how to hide what they're doing from you. I don't know how many of you here are aware of something called Finsta accounts, but that basically means when a child has social media accounts that the mom and dad don't know about. So maybe you're following them on Instagram. They'll have one Instagram handle for you. So you'll be thinking, my child is posting good things or doesn't even post a lot. But they'll have one other account that's the real account. That's where they are being themselves fully. And for some parents, when they find it out, they are so distraught because they're like, so even my child has 2 lives and I didn't know. So you need to make sure that you're not mistrusting. Maybe some of your mistrust is coming from things that happened to you when you were a child, when you were a young adult. And I'm not saying there are not things that happen to us that shape our worldview, but we have to be able to check it. Is this particular belief I have a good or bad one? So for example, telling children, if you touch a boy, you'll get pregnant. Hello, used to work one time, doesn't work again. So things like that. Tech use without values or boundaries is another one, or if you're not clear on where your mindset is around the world we live in. If you just leave your child online and say, remember I referred to the limiting belief of I'm not tech savvy, I don't get it, so I don't know what to do. Many of those type of parents tend to then leave their children without any boundaries online. They are just like, we'll hope for the best. I can't come and kill myself. Maybe everybody is online. Let them do it. That doesn't work. So you can't be over monitoring, neither can you just leave them to say figure it out. And sometimes that figure it out is for parents who, some of their mindset is one of, I want my children to like me, I want to be their friend, I don't want to seem too harsh. Sometimes that can fall into permissiveness, where parents then leave children online, which is not healthy. Okay, and then lastly, kids can build bad habits. Our children watch us and do what we do. And our behaviors many times are linked to our mindset, our beliefs, the limiting ones, the positive ones. So our children are forming who they are. Their view, their blueprint of the world is based on what we share. All right, so I want to do a quick reflection exercise. And obviously you don't have to share this at all, but I'll just give it for like a minute. With some of the things we've talked about, I'd like you to do a quick reflection. What beliefs about parenting, tech, or control were passed down to you? You can write down one belief that you've carried with you that maybe is not serving your family today. So let's be honest here. Maybe you're somebody who thinks, children should not ask questions. If they ask questions, they're being rude. Maybe you grew up believing that children should be seen, not heard. And that has come into your family unit today. Except today, the children we have are very vocal. they are very smart, they are sharp digitally, and they have a lot of information that they are getting access to consistently online. Even if they're not online, their friends are online. So if they're not able to come and ask you questions, deep questions, any question under the sun, who is forming their mindset? So I'll just time it for a minute. Just think about one. We all have it, by the way. So just think about one belief you have about parenting, or maybe how it affects you, how you protect them online or not, how you control them, how you discipline them, maybe your thoughts about relationships, some ideologies you have. How emotionally intelligent are you? Are you encouraging your children to have words, to share how they feel? Maybe you are one of those people that think boys should be tough. And if they cry, this one has become weak. What about self-confidence? Are you speaking words of affirmation to your children where they feel so seen, understood, loved by you, that when you discipline them, they will understand that it's for their good? I'm not saying don't discipline, but it's done with kindness. So just note that down. When we have time at the end for Q&A, if you want to share, you can. But just note that for yourself. Yeah, 30 more seconds. Now, the reason for this is because when you are aware, that's when you can start doing something. So if there's only one thing you pick away today, that, what? I've had this particular thought or mindset, and I don't really think it's positive for my family. Either because you've gotten feedback from your children, and children should be able to give us feedback. We can talk about that another day. Or you just feel like you want to do it differently. The next step, which is usually the hardest, is how do you make that change? But, well done if you've at least identified something that you're like, I don't want to pass this down to my children. I don't really think this is something I want my children to pick up from me. Okay? Then the next thing will be the how. All right. So just as I said, intentional parenting starts with awareness. A lot of our parenting defaults come from somewhere. They come from somewhere. But in the digital age, they have to be reevaluated. The reason why, like I've said it several times, is our children are not growing up in the same world we did. So digital literacy and emotional intelligence, they must go hand in hand. Because no matter how much you protect your child from being online, guess what? They're online. If it's YouTube, they're seeing something somehow. And social media platforms are not waiting anymore for children to download their apps on their phone. So you can say, I'm not giving my child a smartphone. But hello, some of these social media platforms, they can be accessed on a desktop, on a laptop. So it's not only about I don't give my child a phone. You have to be aware that you are building up your child's ability to be digitally sound person who's able to be responsible online, stay safe, avoid the pitfalls, talk to you when things come up that they are not comfortable with, that makes them distressed, that makes them unhappy. A lot of the people that I talk to today, the children that cannot talk to their parents, is because their parents are not forming a relationship where the children feel safe enough to tell their parents whatever they see online, knowing that if I tell my parents, they will listen, they won't judge me, they won't beat me, they will listen, and then together what to do. Even if the child has done something wrong, they need to know that, you know what, no matter what, when I tell mom and dad, we'll figure it out together. But our parenting defaults, many times, if we haven't taught ourselves to be intentional, we just do it and say, and somebody asks you, why do you have to believe? Most people haven't slowed down enough to say, well, I believe this because if you can back your belief, then wonderful. Okay. So now, how do we start putting all of this together to build this digital guidelines? With my background in cyberpsychology, online safety, child safeguarding, being a certified particular focus around family dynamics, parenting in the digital age. Technology is changing all of us, humanity, and that's what cyberpsychology is about. But ever since I've gotten that training, I recognize that we are not the same as we were pre-digital. And then when you add COVID as well, a lot of people haven't fully come out COVID did to them as a family, as individuals, blah, blah, blah. So how do you start the stronger family? The first one is that your values have to include digital guidelines. So if you've never sat down to say, what are our values as a family? Maybe it's trust, maybe it's honesty. Then you have to say, what are our digital guidelines that support this? So for example, a lot of children they open their social media account by lying. So if your relationship with something kicks off with a lie, are you really going to be a good steward and user of that platform? And it's not their fault. A lot of their friends are online, opening this account on social media are easy. It's easy to lie. All you have to do is say, I'm 13 if you are really just 10. They're not checking, they're not verifying. So they get online. So if somebody's introduction to something is with a lie, usually you might wonder about that. So that can be something you talk about. Sometimes it's as simple as that. This family, these are our rules. These are the ages we want our children to get on social media. You explain it to them, you get them to understand, and you can sign a contract. It's just something to show that we're thinking about this. Building a stronger family as well includes weekly check-ins about life experiences plus online experiences. Remember I said that a lot of us parents are the last generation that know analog world and digital, meaning a lot of us learned about digital when we got older. I remember having my first email when I was in university. My first phone, I think I had graduated, So for a lot of our children, from day one, they are using phone, they are pressing tablets, So it's important to check in regularly with them because for them, guess what? They don't see a difference between their online and offline world. For them, it is one. If they fight somebody in person, they will continue it online. If somebody online was mean to them, they will continue it in school the next day. So if somebody had a party, they invite them, they will know. They will have FOMO. They will feel bad. They will like nobody told them. They'll feel left out. So our children, online and offline, are the same. So for example, we're on summer holiday now. Don't think, oh, my child is at home all day. My child is not going anywhere. So my child is not mixing with funny people outside. You don't know who they're seeing online. And it's not even just about screen time limits. When they are online, unless you are sitting with them the whole time, you don't know who they are seeing, what they're doing, what they're picking up online. So it's so important you create an environment where you are talking. This picture here on the right-hand side is most families now. Mom, dad, child, everybody is on your screen. They're not talking. They're not making eye contact. If this is what you're teaching your children, this is what they will do. Then I think it's also important to do discipline without shame or fear. Meaning that if your child does something bad online, sees something they shouldn't have, it's not about punishing them. If you have built the relationship, guess what happens? They are more likely to come to you and tell you that, I came across this stuff online. You know why it's important that happens? Because if they come across something online that's inappropriate, the algorithm starts sending them more and more and more and more of the information. But if they're able to tell you, together, you can teach them how to clean out their cookies, how to delete certain content that they have seen, how to unfollow certain people. Because unfortunately, the way the internet works today is if you look for something, I'm sure you can all resonate with this. If you think something, you say it, you discuss it, maybe you're thinking, I want to travel to St. Lucia. I've heard it's a nice place. St. Lucia some people have been saying St. Lucia is a nice place. I think I would like to check it out. Guess what will start happening? You start seeing things about St. Lucia. So it's the same thing with our children. If they are curious about something, they go online, the algorithms will say, this user or this IP address, they are interested in this information. And then the cookies start to send more and more. So you see how children need to be able to know these things because it gives them a level of empowerment and power to know that, okay, this is why this is happening, okay? Then obviously age-appropriate freedoms built on trust. So for example, one of the most common questions I get is, what is the right age for a smartphone? And I say, number one, delay as long as you can. Number two, know that once you give a child a smartphone, the work on you as a parent becomes much more. So you need to make sure you are ready for that additional work. However, what you want to do is let your child know, let's say as part of your family values, you agree that we will give you your first smartphone when you enter secondary school. But these are the things we'll be expected. Then, because you have a parenting vision board, you start thinking, if I'm going to give my child a phone, for example, when they enter secondary school at 13 years old, these are the things I need them to be able to do. They know that they know that there will be limits. They know that when I say it's time to shut down the devices, they do. They know that if they see inappropriate content, they can talk to me. So when you've built that, you can now start giving them those, the freedom as they get older. So for example, I have an almost 18-year-old and 16-year-old. The way I can monitor them online is very different from when they started using it when they were younger, when we gave them their first phone at about 13, 14, then we said no social media, then they got on, it's bit by bit. They know that at night, for example, they must turn their phones in at night. Well, no, there's no argument there. If you can turn your phone in at night, especially during the school term, then you cannot use your phone. So things like that, then you build it in. And then lastly, around building a stronger family, this is more from a therapeutic intervention perspective. I believe it's so important we reparent ourselves. A lot of us, all of us still have I have a young Yetty inside of me. Something she got when she was a kid, something she needed, she didn't get. But guess what? I, as an older Yetty, can give me what I needed. So if one of my love languages is words of affirmation. So when I hear criticism, I can be very sensitive to it. So for me, I can calm myself down because I recognize that's a trigger for me. So imagine then your child says something that's kind of critical and your subconscious kicks in that, this is criticism. When we get criticized, we shut down, we get angry, we get sad, we start to think about it forever. Because I'm learning to reparent myself, I'm reducing my trigger. I'm not denying that that is something that I'm sensitive about, but I'm able to calm myself down when something happens that is a trigger. I hope you understand where I'm going. So when you start to reparent yourself and recognize that some of my beliefs, some of the ways I behave now, some of my responses, actually, they are tied to something that Auntie BC said when I was a child. They are tied to something one teacher said, that you can never be good at maths. And because you decided you must be good at maths, or maths, doing good at maths is what makes you smart. If your child should now be struggling with math, you might overreact because in your mind, you have coded lack of math knowledge is a problem. Yeah, somebody is commenting that indeed that criticism one, they notice it in themselves. And when their daughter makes critical statement, it's so important we do that hard work, because when we do, we're not going to fix it overnight. It's not magic. When you are aware, remember I said with cognitive behavioral therapy, you are checking your thoughts. You are catching it first that, oh, this is the thought I have. Okay, I'm checking it. Is it true? Is it limited? Is it positive? And then I want to correct it. It seems like it's a 1, 2, 3 process. But guess what? Our brains are neuroplastic, which means once you start training it a different way, its job is to make your life easier and to be efficient. So it's like an algorithm. So it starts to remember that, oh, when we think like this, this is what we do. And habits are formed in what? 60 days, 30 days. So imagine today, after this conversation, you are picking the one thing you recognize you want to start changing in yourself so that you can replace limiting beliefs, replace this. You can now start doing it regular. Every day, you will see the difference. Awesome. So I want us to bust a few myths. I'll be fast with this because I recognize the time and I want us to have some time for Q&A. Is number one, that children will do what you say. No, they don't do what you say. They do what you do. Hello, hi. So if you are always speaking certain words, you're like, oh, I can't do that. You look online, you're always comparing yourself to people. They are going to pick it up. So somebody had asked them, when I did my book launch in December, my daughter was on a teenage panel that we had. And one of the questions was the self-confidence and being online. And she answered and said, well, she thinks also it's how you were raised or how your mom is. If your mom goes online and is always comparing herself or feels bad or says, wow, see how other people are doing this, me, I can't. And those are the kind of words you speak. Your child will learn to compare yourself. She was like, but if you go online, other people are doing their stuff. Okay, you be like, they're cute. I'm cute too. That clip is on my page. I leave that Yetty Williams on Instagram. But my point is the children do what we do, not what we say. The second one is that school will teach them how to stay safe online. A lot of parents rely on school. School will teach them now. Should be a school that said they have to use laptop from year 3. Yeah, school will teach them. Hello, newsflash. Schools can only do so much. From the time a child closes at 3 o'clock till they go to bed, They're under your roof. They're under your controls and your digital platforms. I mean, digital rules. So you can't rely on school. School can support, but guess what? A lot of the things that happen are outside school hours, and then the children take that into school. So you must make sure as a family, you have a digital plan. You have to have one. What I call a family digital well-being plan. You must have one. So don't rely on schools. And schools are increasingly telling us that children are bringing so much bad behavior to school, and then the parents are blaming the school. It's not the school. Okay. I think this is the last myth I want to burst, which is that I turned out right, so my children will be fine. I'll just do the same thing. No, it can't work. Children are growing up in a vastly different world. So it's not the same. So it's your parenting skills that have to change. You have to learn and upgrade so that you are ready to be intentional for such a time as this. You know, it's different. And I'm so passionate about this because when I talk to so many families, the ones that take this on board and start to shift, you see a shift in their family dynamics. You know, you see children who want to talk to their mom and dad, who don't just disappear into the online world, or families that everybody is just in their own digital world. They're not talking, they're not spending time together. That's not how deep families are developed. That's not how strong families are created. You know, and before you blink, I say parenting is like 16 years. 0 to 10 is when you have that's the foundation. Then after that is you're refining, you're modifying. Then by 16, 17, when they are leaving for A levels, uni, whatever, by then it's what you have done. No, I'm not saying you can't start to refine if you find areas you need to, but we have to look at it as that curriculum, as that period of time. And we have to not say, we can't say, well, I turned out right. In fact, when I have clients I'm working with, I say, did you really turn out right? Let's be honest. I don't know some areas of it that this war that you might want to read. If you want to be honest with yourself, there's some things you don't want your children to pick up, but you can't just hope and pray for it. You have to start intentionally changing it so your children pick up the right skills. Okay. All right, so this I'll probably make this I think I'll just send this to you so that we can wrap up and we can get to Q&A. I tried to keep this 10 to 11 power hour, but you know, we lost almost 15 minutes at the beginning, 20 minutes with my tech issues. So we might run over just a little bit by 5 minutes. I hope that's okay. But if you absolutely have to leave at 11, you can. So, you know, this is something I came up with all my research, all my work, coaching, training. In my book, I came up with the types of digital parenting archetypes. There are 4 types. And you have to know your type so that you can start to say, okay, where am I? If you don't know something, you're not aware. How can you either improve on it, do more of it, or stop doing it if that's what you need to stop doing? But, you know, our brains can't just stop something. We can't be void. Things can be void. So if you say, I'm going to stop doing this, guess what? You will do it again tomorrow if you don't replace it with something else intentionally. And this comes from you're studying the brain and your linguistic programming, which is that your brain is a muscle. So whatever you want, you have to focus on that. You can't say what you will not do. So for example, somebody that says, I want to become healthy, I want a 6-pack. So I will not eat donuts again. But then you're not doing any exercise, you're not doing any crunches, the 6-pack will not come, you know? So it's the same thing. So the 4 digital parenting types that are very important, because somebody can be an amazing in-person, physical, very intentional parent, but then they can be very avoidant online because they have that limiting belief we discussed earlier of I don't get tech. So avoidant parenting is one, which is very hands-off. They don't understand technology, so they don't do anything. It's like, whoa. Then dependence is the one that you yourself, remember the picture I said earlier, you're always on your phone. You're always on your device. The child is talking to you, you're like, I'm hearing you. Always on device, dinner time, every time, in the car. You are showing your children that over-reliance is the best way. Or you are the one that gives your child a device so they can keep quiet. You are teaching your child, if you want to be quiet, throw a tantrum and just give him a phone. Then complacent, they are the ones who are kind of aware, but they're just like, it's part of modern life. What can I do? Oh, you know, so that's complacent. But for me, the best is the innovative one. Ones that take an active role. They're balancing safety needs. It's our job to observe, to learn, to get rid of anything that might be blocking us so that we can prepare these children for the future. So those are the 4. I have a link towards the back, but you'll get it as well, where you can take this quiz. It's short, straightforward, and it'll tell you what type you are. On this call, likely you're expect what you are. Everybody is different. And when you know where you are, it's not about judgment. Like in the book, every chapter ends with a coaching prompt. So maybe you read the chapter on cyberbullying, you now end with a coaching prompt at the end. It's like having your own digital parenting coach. So you can start thinking, what questions should I be asking my child? Have I discussed this with them at all? What do I need to tell them for them to know that I'm aware? So let me give you one quick insight. We do a lot of training in schools, churches, PTAs, one-on-one with students, and we find that a lot of children have been victims of cyberbullying. Some of them are actually the ones doing the cyberbullying. But guess what? They say they don't really tell their parents or teachers. And when we say why, we don't even believe the teachers or parents have any idea of what to do if we tell them. So they just manage it among themselves. So as a parent, you have to ask yourself, have I made my child aware that I am aware of what's going on in the digital world so that I can support and help them? Not for you to say, hey, you have come again. That's all you know, just to be using, just to now. Versus, oh, what are you watching? What are you doing right now? It's a bit different. So you want to make sure you are innovative and your children know they can come to you because you know what's up. All right. So this is kind of your challenge, we talked about already one trigger you have. Somebody shared it in the chat about, criticism being something that's their own trigger. And if that's your trigger, your child, your spouse, anybody, once they say something that's critical, because it's your trigger, it can spoil your mood. You become very reactive. You shout, you are sad, you react. You know what? I want to change this. And if I want to change it, how am I going to change it? That's where the real work comes. Okay, and you want to replace it with something intentional. You want to also talk to your child about it. For example, you recognize without knowing it subconsciously. Maybe you've passed on that little child. Maybe you passed on maybe idea to your child already. You want to have a conversation. Don't be shy. Our children do very well when we are open and honest and human. Maybe we say, what, I was thinking about this, and I think maybe I might have presented it in a way that's not positive or helpful. That's it, and that opens conversation. Don't say, I'm a parent. My child can never see me as making a mistake. No, let them know that you're human. Okay? And then you can create your parenting vision board. Why this is important is you want to think about, let's say you have a child who's 5 years old. Think about, okay, for the next 10 years, so as an adult, what would I like boss said to be able to do? What is important to me as a family? All right, how are we now going to get there? And there's a whole suite of activities, decisions you must make around you to help that vision come to light. So for example, did you know that the choice of school can either be additive to your values or take away from it? So you need to be asking yourself, what's important to me as a family? Okay, let me list it down. Now you can start looking at what schools are going to support that. So the work is very intentional. And the reason I am excited about this space of family and parenting life is we've never had a time such as this with a lot of knowledge, a lot of research, a lot of science into how human behavior truly impacts us. We have so much research now that we don't have to make the same mistakes from before. But to not make the same mistakes, we have to be aware. So some conversation starters, sometimes parents don't even know where to start. Once again, the book has a lot of support for you in it, but you can just ask them every day. So tell me something online you saw today. What did you see that made you, especially this summer, don't fool yourself. Your children are online. So you can have those conversations with them. All right, you can just take a screenshot of this because we're not going to have time to go through it. And to be honest, I just left it from some of my past masterclasses where this has been a cheat sheet for you to go and start your own parenting vision board if you've never done one for your family. So you can take a screenshot of this. These are 6 things you can start to do. Okay. This is the next slide, another 5 steps to create your own family vision board. And this all includes digital, offline, online, emotional intelligence, values, all of those things. It forces you to really think deeply about yourself, what you want. Because Honestly, parenting today cannot be left to chance because hello, I used to call it Uncle Google, but now Uncle ChatGPT, Uncle Snapchat, and the social media are all ways to influence children. And I dare say that as parents, our biggest role right now is to be there for context, not tech. Our children have something I saw said that the amount of information that comes out on the internet every day, human beings, our lifetime, we cannot consume all that content. So it's really about the context. How are we applying it? How is it shaping us? How is it shaping our children? How are we using this together for good? That's where we should. All right. You can also take just some of the it's the questions I had before, but it can help you create your own very easy cheat sheet that you use in family planning. All right, and that's it. I flew through a bit, but I hope this was also very helpful. Shots of this, but I'll send this to you as well, where you can take the quiz. You can subscribe to my digital parenting newsletter, where all I talk about there is something with the digital world. So new things coming up, research, online discipline, inhibition, how it's affecting our children, what we can do. That one, I help you stay up to date. You can also join our digital parenting VIP community. That gives you access to worksheets, training, replays of all of these. So this is the first time you are joining. Second time, you can have access to all of the replays, listen to it as a podcast when you're just going about your business. Because I find that for us to start to shift, it needs to be continuous. So it's great you're here today, but maybe the next masterclass is not for another month. That might not even be a topic you're interested in, but if you go into the archives, you're able to find something relevant for you. And of course, you can do one-on-one with me if you want. All right, so I'm going to allow us to have some time for Q&A. If you do have a question, I would appreciate if you put it in the what's it called now? In the Q&A. In the Q&A, if you have a question, please drop it in Q&A. I'll pick it up there. It can be anonymous. You can share with everybody, and I will respond. So let me just quickly see chat if anybody said anything in chat apart from Debbie, who mentioned the criticism thing, noticing yourself. Well done, Debbie. I'll really be excited to see what you do about that awareness. You can keep it, you can get in touch with me. I would love to see how you're working on that, because the best thing is when you're aware, you can say, oh, I see this, I recognize this. I feel so negative when I'm criticized. Nobody likes to be criticized, by the way, but some people are very reactive to it. And sometimes when you trace it, it's something from childhood, something from somewhere before, and you want to be careful not to be triggered, because positive criticism also helps us grow. So if we have any Q&A, you can drop it in there and I'll pick it up. I also recognize that, some parents have questions around parental software and all of that. If you have those questions, feel free to ask me. But I find that there are so many options. But really, really, is this behind the scenes work that makes a difference in whether or not all this parental software you put in place works? Okay, so I have a question here. How do we balance discipline and trust? It's a great question. And the truth is that, trust is built in both directions, child to parent, parent to child. So when you want to discipline, you want to be disciplined because you are doing what? You are correcting a behavior. Your child also has to know that there are consequences for certain behaviors that are inappropriate. But you want to try and make sure that it is clear what your expectations are. Sometimes when discipline doesn't work and trust breaks down, is children feel parents sometimes can be hypocritical, but they are not consistent. So if, for example, one of the things you believe is a child should, every time they come to the dinner table, for example, they must put their phone down and they must talk, make eye contact, and talk to family members, not on their devices. You have told them that's something you want. You are going to trust them to follow your rules around that. And you're going to let them know what the consequences are. If they come to the dinner table the first time and they use it, maybe it's a new rule you put in place after today, for example, you tell them that we're all going to drop our phones somewhere and not pick it until after dinner. But your child keeps using your phone. They're like, okay, second time you do it, I'm going to take your phone away from you for 1 week. And don't say something like, I'll take your phone away from you forever. because a lot of us know it can never be forever. So when your punishment is over the top, the children are like, yimu, polite yimu, that mommy will say 1 year, but she will forget. So make it within reason, something you can remember, So that's how you do it. And then as your children are doing what they should be doing, you also want to be giving them feedback, positive feedback. So when your child does something right, let them hear you say, well done. I see that, this whole week you haven't touched your phone while we were using dinner. Really good job. Well done. So that's the way you show that you're acknowledging right behavior. Let them not only hear your voice loudest when you complain about something they're not doing. So the minute you're doing that bit by bit, positive discipline, correcting behavior, being clear on what you expect, giving accolades when they do the right thing, bit by bit, you're building trust, you're building understanding, and then everybody's able to know what's expected to a large extent. And you're allowed to change your mind. So if before you only thought, okay, you thought that, I don't know, they didn't have to drink water every day. I'm just picking a random example. And suddenly you recognize that you've done some research and they're like, you know what, we need to be doing 8 glasses of water every day. You want to come and say, you know what, I'm going to stop buying soda in this house because I think it's really important that when we're thirsty, by drinking water rather than soda because it's better for us. You are the one making a change. So it's only fair that you explain it to them and then they understand. They may not like it too. I always say my children don't have to like all my rules, but at least one thing I owe them is they will understand where I'm coming from. And we have a dialogue. So I told you the ages of them already, going on 18 and 16. So we have a relationship where some of the things I put in place, they can question and say, well, Mom, why this? Have you considered that? So that's what I'll say. All right, I hope that helped to answer your question on that. But very, very good question. It just says Zoom user. But very good question. We have to balance discipline and trust. And then as your child gets older, you can start giving them more leeway, a little bit more. But they must have earned it. Our children need to know that we need to be able to trust them as well. All right, so we've answered that question. Any other questions? Let me see. Okay, I will hold off if there are any more questions at all. But as always, you can take a screenshot of this so you know where to find me on Instagram, on Facebook, by email, however you want to reach out to me. I am happy to support. And if there are no more questions, we can also wrap up. I hope this was helpful. I'm going to go back to the very first okay, I go back to the very first screen. I'll just do it this way. So it's my hope that today we've been able to cover this to a level that gives you some food for thoughts. How do you break generational patterns that are not serving you? How do you replace limiting beliefs with more intentional, positive beliefs? And how do you build a stronger family? Because patterns and beliefs, if not checked, really affect our behaviors, our thoughts, our actions, the things we say. And if we're aware of this, it can build stronger families, which by default is part of what protects our children from some of the negativity online. Because, they've been built, it's like having an armor ready to face the world. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your patience as well. Ola, you feel attacked in a good way. How are you attacked? Maybe I just shook some tables. But honestly, I feel like our children benefit so much when they have parents who are willing to go inside and do the work. You do the work and say, you know what? I need to change some things. They recognize it, they benefit, and they see that mommy and daddy are always growing. And it makes your children feel so safe that, mom and dad are working on being better versions of themselves. It works wonders. I don't know how old your children are, but I'm not saying I know everything, but honestly, I've talked to thousands of families, and I now have children that are older teenagers. It makes a world of difference. So, so I hope the feeling attacked is in love. Yeah, please do it. All right, Violet, thanks. You say you joined late, but you're able to learn a thing or two. I'm glad you were able to. So yeah, I would stay on and wrap up this call in about 2 minutes. Thanks you for staying here. But We do this regularly. I try to do it at least once every month or once every 6 weeks. I bring up a topic, talk about it like this, 1 hour usually, and then everybody goes, tries it out, gives me feedback. You know, if you have any topics you want me to cover, please feel free to reach out to me as well. Awesome, awesome. All right, appreciate it. I will be counting down. If you have any main takeaways you want to share, drop in chat, please drop it. Remember I told you my love language is words of affirmation. So yeah, affirm me. Tell me what you picked up, what you liked from this today. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend ahead.